Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today is in two parts. Part one's outside, part two's inside, and consists of some news, not much, and we'll have a look at some orchids. I'm interested in lack of progress on some, and we'll pick on a few and have a look at them and discuss what I mean by lack of progress and why I think there is a lack of progress. And can I do anything about it? Okay, right, let's get going. Okay, part one, we're outside. I'll speak quietly because it's Sunday morning, unlike some of my neighbours who've been bellowing at the tops of their voices. But the shade netting's up. I've used the aluminium shade netting because it's reflective of both light and heat. So we'll do two jobs in one go. And let's go around here so I can show you what I've done. From the jungle here. So somebody suggested, have you got a heavy brick or something? And I thought, well, no, I haven't. And then I thought, actually, yes, I have. These are used for bonsai purposes, often to actually grow a tree on the rock itself. They're very, very heavy. They're actually pieces of a heavy rock type, and they're held together with cement to make a shape. So basically what I've done is I've attached the corner, and this end here loops round the guttering so that it can't pull off. It can't come this way, yeah, because it's pulled tight. And then both of those are hooked around the rock to hold this end in place. Now that doesn't look much and the string looks flimsy, but that string has a hell of a breaking strain. You can't break it, it's almost impossible. You need to cut it or you just can't do it. So, and okay, if it only lasts 2 or 3 months, that's as long as I need, yeah, because obviously it's going to get wet when it rains. So that's one side, and then the other side's just the same, hooked around the end of the gutter and pulled at an angle so that it's basically pulling the whole thing into here. And this bit can't pull over because it's tucked under the gutter. So I'm pretty confident that's going to stay there for the sort of weather we get in the UK during the summer months. And it's only got to be there about 6, maybe 8 weeks at the most. It should have gone up a month ago really. So next year I'll have the dates in my notes as to when the shade netting needs to go up. And it's as the sun advances up the roof. So shade netting on half the roof, the only half of the roof that the sun ever gets on, which is all I need. And it has made it a bit duller, but you know, when the sun comes out, that will be well appreciated by the plants that are on the top shelves. So there we go, that's the outside bit done. Okay, part two, we're back indoors. News first, because I want to take the camera off the stand in a minute, so something else to look at, which goes with part one really. Not really much news. I'll be off to Malvern on the coming Saturday. I'm going up there on the Saturday with Hannah. We're hoping to get there, well, it doesn't open until 10 in the morning, there's no point in getting there before then, but we're hoping to get there sort of mid-morning, maybe late morning, and we'll be there for the day. I think they kick out at 5 o'clock, so we're going to make a good day of it. So anybody that's around, come and say hello if you can find me, because I can almost guarantee that we won't be spending all our time where the orchids are. We will be looking around some of the other show parts as well. It's a massive show. You can't see it all in a day, but there's lots of bits that neither of us are interested in, so by excluding those we get to see most of what we want. That includes a couple of arena events and obviously looking around the orchids. It'll be interesting to see how many of the European traders actually turn up, actually will have found a way to turn up. Strange, isn't it, that people can come from Thailand and places like that and managed to get their orchids into the UK, and yet just across the channel they failed to do so. Does make you wonder, doesn't it? Anyway, the problem is the relationship between the UK and the EU. The relationship between the UK and everywhere else probably has a different set of rules or whatever. Anyway, I don't want to go into it because I can't change it. All I can do is suffer the consequences, basically, which means there'll be less choice to buy from. But we shall see how that goes. So that's Malvern. Yesterday was our Orchid Society AGM. It's the one event of the year that I can't say I enjoy it. It's a function that has to be done, and as treasurer I've obviously got an active part in it. I have to give a report on the previous year, which our year goes from beginning of January to the end of December, so I'm doing the report in June, so plenty of time to get it ready, and I still ended up having to rush. But it's just basically an analysis of, you know, sort of opening balances, closing balances, what income we've had, where it came from, what expenses we've had, etc. Typical sort of accounts type report. So that bit went okay. Committee members were re-elected en masse. Lynn has, well, kindly, quite honestly, because of the consequences of not doing it, has accepted the chairman post again for another year, which means I'm now happy to stay for another year. And we've got some additional members that some of are helping the committee but are not elected committee members. So between us we have a pool of people that should be able to cater for most of the functions by spreading the load, really. That's what it comes down to. And talking of spreading the load, having left one Orchid Society where I was responsible for the sound system, guess who's now got the sound system for this Orchid Society? So I've got rid of one and gained another one. The problem being that the storage area where we meet is a block-built area with no ventilation and no heating. It's damp. It's got that cold, damp, musty feel, and we don't want to store electrical units, especially speakers, which can suffer if they get damp, in that place. So we can't leave it there. So somebody's got to take it home and, of course, bring it back. Volunteers? Any volunteers? All right, I'll do it then. So I've ended up taking on that responsibility. Unfortunately, it has a serious downside. If for any reason I can't go to a meeting, somebody's got a hell of a journey to come and get it, because I probably live farther away than 2 or 3 times as far away as anybody else. So it would be the longest journey to come and get the sound system. But that's not my problem. Yeah, I've decided, you know, I said that I'll look after it and I'll bring it to the meetings and to the shows, because we use it at the shows as well. I'll do all that, which is a pain, because it's heavy, and I'll have to set it up and take it down, put it back in the car, get it out of the car, bring it back in here. It's a pain. But if we can't store it in the place, which was what I suggested, then somebody's got to keep it in their home. The person who would be best to do that is the person that lives closest to the hall where we meet. So if they can't make it, we've only got to pop round the corner and get it, haven't we? But did we get any volunteers? Of course not. So I'm stuck with it yet again. Mind you, compared with the one I was looking after before, this one's really good. It's actually quite smart. Minimal wiring. It's basically a modern system, you know, so you connect, you know, the amplifier to the speaker, plug the 2 in, and you're up and running basically. So it's pretty good stuff. So that's that. That was followed by, it's traditional that we have an auction. People bring in their surplus plants. There's always a request not to bring your rubbish plants in, but to bring your surplus plants in, and they go into an auction. And you can put a reserve price on if you don't want to let it go for pennies, which is what a lot of them do go for. And as far as the treasurer is concerned, it's quite difficult to keep up with it. But it was done slightly differently this time, and I didn't have much to do till the end, which was brilliant. So basically, each lot is given a number, and the people who are selling have to write down the plant or plants in their lot with their lot number under their name. So we know whose plants they are and what lot number they are. There were only 3 sellers, so that made life easier as well. So the starting point is pretty easy to do. The sellers know what their plants are and they know what their name is, so they can fill that form in quite easily. And the lots are just numbered starting at 1 for how many they are. So they don't have to think about that, they just fill in the columns on the sheet. So that's the first bit. Then we come to each plant, which is picked up, auctioned, and people have a number they can hold up, which is, a paddle, I think they're traditionally called. So people bid on the particular plant, and our president does the auction, and he actually does quite a good description of the plant, like where it grows, whether it's a cool grower, because he's a judge as well, so obviously knows a lot about orchids. And people bid, and then there is a winner. And the winning bid amount and the paddle number are given to the people doing the desk job, and they write out a slip saying how much the bid was and the paddle number of the person who won the bid, and they give that slip to the person who won the plant. At the end, people come up to the treasurer with their little slips of paper, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and hand them over to the treasurer, who adds them up if necessary, and writes down in the book who it is and how much they're paying. That's the first bit. That's the easy bit. The next bit is for the books, the accounting books, because basically the people have paid the society. Obviously the society has got to reimburse the sellers, the people who put the plants in the first place, with the amount of money they've made, less 10% that the society keeps for hosting the event and to help with the books. So that's how it all works, and unfortunately I sorted it all out this morning. 2 people did deals after the auction, so they paid the money, but I don't know what they've paid the money for. In other words, I don't know what plants that money's for, and if I don't know what plants it's for, I can't give the seller their money. So I have a little, email to Lynn with a white flag, help, can't cope. So we got to try and find out what plants were bought. And there's only 3 sellers. Whoever did the deals, it might only be one person did some deals. It may not be, I don't know, but somehow or other we've got to find out what that money relates to, so that I can get a total for the seller. This is how much we owe you, less 10% for the books. So, bit of fun, and it's once a year. So although I find it a hassle, it's only once a year. So that was that. The rest of the meeting was just basically AGM stuff. Tea and coffee, or coffee and cakes in my case. Cake, yay. Don't have cake here, so that's always a bonus. Yeah, so that was the event. As I say, the only other news is preempted news, which is I'll be going to the Orchid show next Saturday to Malvern. I'll be there most of the day if anyone wants to come and say hello if you're around. And we'll take it from there. Right, I'm going to shut off now because I want to get the camera down for a minute. So I'll be back. Right, so following on from part 1, which was filmed outside, which was showing you the shade netting on the roof. Can you see the join? So this section here, covered in moss, has got no shade netting on. And this section here has. It doesn't look that dramatic, does it? But it really is going to keep that sun off. But I noticed straight away when I came, I went into, when I'd finished it all, I put the steps away and put all the stuff back. All my bonsai had to be moved so that I could get round the outside and everything. And came back in, made a coffee, and came back out here, and I thought, that's quite a reduction in the overall light level. But nonetheless, I have seen plants suffering from too much light. Bearing in mind where they came from before, we had 2 layers of shade netting over all the glass. And now all I've got is one layer of shade netting over half of the roof. So there is a lot more light in here, despite my eyes saying it's dropped a bit. So I'm pleased with that, and it was a right faff getting it up there, because basically I got the steps up in that corner there, just around the corner, and threw the whole lot onto the roof and managed to get it to stay there, just in a bundle basically. And then I found my corner, the corner that was going to end up there, threaded my piece of string through and dropped that piece of string down and hooked it under the piece of rock that you saw in part 1 to actually hold that corner where I wanted it. So that's one corner out of 4 fixed. And we've now got a big bundle on the roof. And if you look out there leaning against the wall, actually I'll go out. That piece of weaponry there has got very, very sharp teeth on it and a very long handle. So basically I used that to hook onto bits of the shade netting and move the whole thing where I wanted it, just by pulling and tugging. You know, I had the steps over there, so I sort of got it up there-ish and unfolded a bit, and it was all done with those sharp teeth on the end of that long handle. And I could reach all of it easily. And then once I'd actually got this edge over here, I could get the steps round here, get my piece of string on that corner and pull it down. I've now got this edge tight. And then all I had to do is loop round the other 2 corners and come round under the gutter and tuck them inside so that it can't unhook itself. So it's up there. And it's up there, I believe, plenty good enough to cope with the weather we're going to get in this time of year. We're not going to get the vicious winter storm sort of thing. We do get a summer storm now and again, but I think it'll stay there. And the reason is, all the storms and everything I had around the other place, the roof netting and everything always stayed there. And I think it's based on the fact that it's full of holes. So although the wind can flap it a bit, it's not like a fence panel or something where the wind hits it and can't go through. It has to push it over. And I don't think that will happen with this shade netting because it's got holes in. So the wind can go straight through it. It's not hindered by the shade netting. There's only a small amount of resistance. So I don't think the wind's going to have a huge effect on it. We shall see. And obviously in my notes I will make a note of when this shade netting should have gone up, not when it did. Well, I'll make a note of when it did as well, but this should have gone up quite a bit earlier really. You know, there's some of the plants have suffered and have got the deep purple colouring on their leaves, and the problem you've got with that deep purple colouring, it's a protective mechanism to stop the leaves burning because it makes them more reflective rather than absorbent, which is the green. Plants are green for a reason. It's the sunlight that provides the energy for the photosynthesis process, and that involves the chlorophyll, which is green. That's why they're all green. And the purple mechanism is to try and stop that, to stop the leaves burning, so it's a defensive mechanism. And I believe that if the leaves get too far gone, then it doesn't matter what you do to the plant, they're not going to go back green again. And if they do, it could take an awful long time. So a little bit of damage from the light, hopefully to be avoided next year. And I think it's probably less than 2 weeks now to the summer equinox thingy, you know, longest day and all that, shortest night, 21st I think that is, so it's not far away now. So, you know, as the summer progresses, I can watch this shadow, which currently is here. So this half of it is in shade and the sun hits this half. And then as the sun gets lower in the sky, this shadow will come across until it gets to there. That's the date I want. Yeah? Because that will tell me how long from the longest day it takes to get that shadow gone off of the roof, at which point the shade netting can come off. And then all I've got to do is bring that amount of time, that number of days, back before the longest day. That's the date it needs to go up next year, rather than the date it actually did. That way we avoid that intense light. So shade netting's up there for two reasons. It's up there to stop that intense light over that area, and certainly over those top shelves. And in addition to that, that'll stop a reasonable amount of the heat coming in as well. That's why I chose the aluminium stuff. It's got those reflective strips on it, and it's quite a lot more efficient than the normal sort of green stuff with the holes in, or even the black stuff with the holes in, which in my mind is attracting the heat, not reflecting it. So the aluminium stripy stuff should do its job. Let's see how it goes. We'll monitor it. Right, so that's that bit. Now we'll have a look at some plants that don't seem to be growing and have a chat about why I don't believe they're doing very well and why I think that might be. I mean, some of it's just going to be the environment doesn't suit them. Some of it could be that they were just not very healthy plants when I got them and they've never really recovered. And some of them will be totally unknown. I haven't got a clue. So we'll have a look at some plants now. So I'll get the camera back up on the tripod, sort myself a coffee, and then we'll have a look at a few plants. I'll be back. Okay, rather than waste lots of time to-ing and from fetching plants, I've brought out a selection of all sorts. And as a special request, you can see the bird feeder. It was just pointed out that if I'm going to have the camera over what is my right shoulder basically, then it would be nice if it could be angled such that, you know, if the video gets boring, at least you can watch the birds on the feeder. There don't seem to be any out there at the moment. That's because the cats have been out there. They've only just come in. Right, so this is an assortment. Some mounted, some not. Different types of potting, different types of plants. They're all here for the same reason. They're not performing, they're not doing as well as they should do. Right, first up are my Dendrobium loddigesii kikis. Since they were taken off the original plant, they have never grown. Now at the beginning of the season we started to get little growths and they've all failed across the board. So these are still just sitting there, not growing. Reason unknown. I keep it as a mount flat because these are often found on the ground, not in the ground but on it. Sometimes in sort of rockier sort of places, so not soggy places or anything like that. And they tend to grow and sort of arch out, and they grow lots of kikis naturally, and those then take root and start new plants, so it can end up with quite a mound. So that was the idea of putting it that way up. I've tried it that way up, I've tried it that way up, they won't grow. Reason unknown. The only thing I can think of is that there was just something wrong with the mother plant and they've inherited it, but they won't grow. So I'm keeping them because they're not in the way. In fact, they can go back where I just got them from. That's one. Right, and then something completely different. This. Now, I was given this. The idea, well, it was given to me. This was Zena gave me this. I was supposed to get this to bloom and get a seed pod. I'm just trying to remember the logic of why I would bother doing that. I think it was the fact that there are not many of these around and they were becoming weak stock, and the stock was becoming weak, so the idea would be to get some new stock going. I can't remember, but basically this has never grown very well. This is it's got a big long word with lots of strange characters in it, but apparently it's pronounced Vasa vixella, and it's Timbiensis. So it's a species, and it's never bloomed for me, so fat chance of getting a seed pod. And I never really knew why. It's a shady type plant, it doesn't like bright light, but I've just put this to one side and thought, well, you're either going to die or you're going to do something. just get on and do your own thing. And I've just sort of, I water it when it's almost dry, and apart from that. So we had a new growth here, and right at the bottom of that new growth is another new growth. We had a weak new growth here, and we have another new growth coming off of it. We had another weak new growth here, and that one's produced quite a lot of new roots. So it's still unknown what it's up to, but it certainly hasn't bloomed yet. And it has grown, in the middle of the plant here is actually quite a strong new growth. But if you look at it closely, the centre leaf has actually rotted and gone brown, which implies it's too wet. So that's not going to progress that growth now. But there are others coming. So I'm not quite sure what else I can do with that. But it's still alive and it's still pushing up new roots, and it has got, new growths, and it has got some roots. It just won't grow well. If you look at the size of these leaves, that's what it's supposed to look like. And this is what I get. So that's that one. This one, irreplaceable, and I suspect it's gone. I keep it because, again, it's not doing any harm. It's Oncidium verrucosum, and its variety Rogersii Baldwin. And it was a good plant when I got it. In bloom, gorgeous blooms. If I think about it, I'll put a pop up. But I'm not going to get that again. That came from the guy that comes over from Peru, used to come to the big shows. I'm not sure he does anymore. He might be at Malvern. Who knows, he might have another one of these tucked away. But this just kept slowly but surely going downhill. New growths rotted. Older bulbs, I had some issues with some of the older bulbs. I had to cut it. I've ended up with one bulb with a manky leaf. It's been like that for ages. And I don't know why the plant went downhill in the first place. It's an Oncidium. It's not an unusual species, but it is an unusual variety. So I wouldn't want to lose it, but I think I already have. Right, this one. Cattleya that wasn't doing too well. No, sorry, I'm getting muddled up with a different one. This was one of the ones that hitched a ride in my order from Schwerter that I went in with Lynn and somebody else. We ordered a job lot from Schwerter, and somebody, still unknown, got in touch with Lynn and put some extra plants in my order for me, and I didn't know they were coming. I went to Lynn's to pick up my 4 plants and got 8. This was one of them. Now, it's an SLC Seagull's Raindrop crossed with Cattleya Why Not. And Cattleya Why Not has gorgeous blooms. But this plant doesn't do as well as it should. It just doesn't. But it's been sitting there doing very little for some time. It now has a new growth just starting, and I've just out of the corner of my eye probably found the reason why it's not doing very well. I will cut it off and show you. That's what's going on at the back of the plant. It's still got scale on it. Now this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, because a lot of people think scale is just scale, and if you've got it tough, you've got to deal with it. It's not as simple as that. There is a type of scale, one of the types of scale, because there are several that you can get, that's called Bois Duval scale, and it is the hardest of all to get rid of. And a lot of the reasons it's the hardest to get rid of is the youngsters, the mobile stage, tend to cluster. So they get in a crevice, like in a leaf joint down there, or at the base of a pseudobulb, and they gather together in large numbers, and they create like a waxy coating. And your insecticides and stuff doesn't penetrate, so it doesn't get them all. Might get a few on the surface, but doesn't get them all. And it has been discovered that while they're nibbling away at your plant, they leave a toxin. So the hole they make has a toxin in it. Some plants don't take any notice and other plants go downhill quite fast. And I think this is one that they have had an effect on. So anyway, I've taken the bad, that was only a tiny little seedling bulb anyway, I've taken that one off. They were right at the base of that. You know what I always say, when you find bugs, deal with them, don't plant back. So I will give that base of that plant a go. I'm not going to spray the whole plant, but I will give the base of the plant, because this is a contact killer. By giving the base of the plant a spray, I'm not giving the plant a chance to use the systemic function, because that needs to go through the whole plant. Top side, bottom side, plant, roots, the lot, so that it gets into the plant and works from the inside out. But it is a contact killer as well. So by giving the base of the plant a good soak, hopefully that will see the end of those. So that could be why this hasn't been growing very well. It could also be the shock. You know, it came from Schwerter in a nursery, you know, and was uprooted basically, transported, stored at one house, transported again, stored at another house, planted up and sulked basically. This is another Cattleya in the same boat, except for this one hasn't got scale. At least I don't think it has. I can see some dead ones from a while ago. But again, it's just a piece that's sulking. It won't grow. It grew a few roots that came down out the bottom of the moss, but it hasn't produced a new growth and there's no sign of life on it. Reason unknown, and I don't even know what the plant is. I must have thought it was worth keeping, but the leaves are now desiccated. There's no strength in them. They're loose, they're floppy, and there's no sign of life. Why on earth am I keeping that? I really don't know. I'm not keeping it. Go on the floor pile, which is to go in the hedge when I get round to it. Right, this one, I can't say this isn't growing, because it is. I mean, it's currently pushed out a new growth here, following the previous one and the previous one, so this is an extension. It's starting some roots, and it's got a new shoot. And up the other end of the plant, it's got a new shoot, and it's growing some new roots. It won't bloom. Now, maybe the new growths that are coming this time round, if it's a light issue, maybe this time we might get some blooms. But I've had this a while now. I got this in a Christmas raffle. And it's never bloomed. And I've had it quite a while. And quite honestly, looking at the size of the plant, to me, it looks plenty big enough to bloom, but it hasn't. Reason? Unknown. But it's getting more light this year, whether it likes it or not, because of where it lives. Right. Cattleya in a pot. Borderline getting thrown out. Desiccated leaves, no life left in these, and now starting to yellow. So the plant is basically dying. That leaf is the only leaf that's not totally desiccated. The bulbs are desiccated. It got put in some large bark. If you have a look through the holes, these roots are all dead. There's no life in that plant at all. So it was about to get thrown out, and now it does that. It must have heard me. It has a new growth. Because there's no strength in that plant, I don't know whether it will have enough strength to get a decent new growth on it. With the new growth should come some roots. But it's a Cattleya bifolia. They are far more fussy about getting the timing right for repotting. Otherwise they just dump their flipping roots. So that might pull through. But why it went down in the first place, I don't know. Because I don't believe that one had the root treatment that I did to my Cattleyas to get rid of the scale that messed them all up because I got it wrong. So that one might pull through. Don't know. This one, this is Dendrobium Thai Angel. This is a Phalaenopsis type. This has never had a good root system, and it started to fail. It now has one leaf left, which is green and not desiccated, it's not shriveled, it's it's an okay leaf. And at the base of the plant, I thought, at long last we've got a new growth, and it's failed. I don't know what it's going to do now, but what it is doing is this shoot here has a new root coming out, and this new growth that's failed also has some roots. So from virtually no roots we now have some roots. So what's it going to do next, I wonder? I would like to think it can find another place to produce a new growth, but I don't know. Why didn't it grow well in the first place? Because I don't do very well with Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums, because they are warmer growers that don't like my cool temperatures and my short days in the winter. They prefer not to have to put up with those. Some are a lot more tolerant than others. Some will slow down or virtually stop for the winter, but that's all they do, and then they come back to life again. And others do the same thing, but they just don't come back to life and they start dropping leaves, which is what that one did. So, right, this is what's left of my Dendrobium hibiki that just disintegrated. It started to rot badly and fast. So that was some sort of, I would suggest, bacterial infection that got in the plant. I grabbed I grabbed a couple of pieces, one of them didn't make it. This bit might make it and it might not. This little piece here is still hard, so it hasn't got that bacterial infection. But it's not happy, the leaves are starting to go. But we have got a few new roots, and this piece is sort of okay. The light's caught it there, and these leaves are still green and reasonably happy. Needs a new growth. But so I'm reasonably certain I know why the main plant went down, and I was lucky to save a bit. But it's a weak piece. It will take a while to get going. So it started with a few roots, not many, but some. And then hopefully a new growth will follow, which will produce even more new roots. Otherwise that's going to fail. And the last one on the surface doesn't look bad. Mounted, this is a Laelia, well actually it's got a strange name, but it's got Laelia in it. It isn't a pure Laelia by any means. This had some scale on it, but it never got it bad. But what it did do was rot several of its new growths. The remainder of one here, look, just gone. And it did that with several of its new growths last year, and the 2 flower spikes it tried to put up. Those just aborted. So very unhappy plant. Difficult to say why, but on this bulb here, which if you look at the size of the bulbs is a large bulb with 2 reasonable leaves on, we've now got 2 new growths starting and some root activity. So this bit of the plant seems okay. But over here I had a lead that pushed out this growth. The new growth that came out aborted. I had a new growth over this side of the plant that aborted. And one there that aborted. So what's it going to do now then? I don't know. But on this growth, which was a good one, that was one that didn't abort and actually grew to a good size and is nice and plump and shiny, and that's a good bulb. But now we've got 2 new growths coming with some roots. So what is it now going to do? Are those going to be weak growths? Are they going to be nice strong growths like the one they're attached to? Is it going to get some decent roots? Difficult to say. And also difficult to say why it didn't grow very well in the first place. But the thing I'm looking at the moment is, has too much of the base of the plant, see the moss has grown, the moss has taken to its mount, and it's growing over the plant now. Well, this would happen in the wild, wouldn't it? The plant wouldn't be able to do anything about it. It hasn't got a human that can come round and pick it off, has it? So, you know, that could be a natural thing. But it could be that this thing just likes a lot more air around its base. And because of the moss, the amount of moss, that's what was making the new growths fail. In other words, it was too humid around the base of the plant. In which case, the solution for this is to get it off the mount. Yeah? and either remount it with next to no moss or put it in a pot with a very, very well draining media and the base of the plant raised above. We may have a go at that. Don't know, but there's so many bulbs on here now with no leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 bulbs, 12 bulbs with no leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half, 5 with leaves. So half of that, over half of that plant is now not much good, but they're not shriveled. They're still reasonably plump. So if the new growths are have rotted where they were last time round, which was tucked up in here, up here, on the end here, yeah, if those failed because they rotted and these don't, then the solution's obvious. The base of the plant needs to come away from any moisture retention and get more air around it. So we'll give these two a chance to grow and see where we go from there. Right, just a little session. So say there are people, probably newer people as well, that just turn that around. Oh, talking to my shoulder instead of to me. So there are people that are quite new to the channel that probably don't know that, they see the videos, they look at the the grow room when I'm pointing around it, and they think everything's marvellous and everything's wonderful. What a brilliant grower, everything works for it. No, it doesn't. It's far from it, if the truth was known. There are quite a few plants around here that are not happy, and there are some that are failing. And down on the floor we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are about to be thrown out. So no, it's not all wonderful and rosy and all that sort of stuff. There are things going wrong. But we have a total change of environment which will explain some of it. We've gone from incredibly high humidity, quite heavy shade and a lot of heat, yeah, to an airy, much more airy atmosphere, a lot brighter light, a much more buoyant feel to the place, and a huge volume of air compared with the other place. This place very rarely feels all closed in and steamy jungle like. It's got that more airy feel. So some plants are going to react adversely to that change, and some plants will go, brilliant, we love it. But I haven't been here a year yet, so time will tell. So there we go, Sunday chat for this week. I don't know how long it's been because it's made up of lots and lots of bits, but there are a lot of people say they like the long ones. But rather than one long chatty thing, you've got pieces, sections this time round. So don't forget the old subscribe if you're not, and the old thumbs up. We like all that. Thanks to the patrons that are hanging in there. Big thank you for that, because that's a sort of financial support, a bit of a commitment, as you might say. And also don't forget the bonsai channel. If you haven't visited, the link's in the description. In this description of all of the things. If you can't see descriptions on the videos, because I know some gadgets, some devices are not very good at showing things like descriptions, like TVs. You can only see the screen, can't you? You can always search YouTube for Roger's Bonsai, same format as the Orchid channel. So capital R, Roger, apostrophe S, capital B, Bonsai, and you'll find the channel. It's a new channel, it's up and coming. We're up to about 630 subscribers now, and I'm over 2,000 watch hours, so I've got over half of the watch hours I need, which is the more difficult bit, because that involves people spending time. Unless you do like I've advised some people and play tricks on YouTube, and you can have multiple windows on devices, yeah? Get a window going on the Bonsai channel and click on the main playlist, which is every video, and just let it play. You'll clock up about 10 watch hours and you haven't had to watch one single second of it. It's a trick. But yeah, it's coming along, and I'm getting quite a few visitors from other bonsai channel owners now, which is nice. So it's going on okay. And this channel plods along. This is never gonna, it's never going to do a Miss Orchid girl and, head up towards 500,000 subscribers. It's not going to happen. It's got its little niche. I've got my people who like to be here and like to watch my videos and everything, and it's a comfortable place to be, hopefully for you and definitely for me. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.